we'll start off with our post-crisis Batman, which is Detective Comics 573 this time. Mike W. Barr writing with Alan Davis on the art. And this is kind of a wacky, goofy Mad Hatter story. Very standalone, does what it does, comes in.
Very fine.
Yeah, Mad Hatter's a little bit different from what we think of him now. He's definitely not as short as he's typically portrayed now. He's more like a, I don't know, like a mustache twirling villain from the 30s. In this,
he does have quite the mustache.
Yeah, as opposed to what we think of his look now. Pretty much what it's been since the animated series, which isn't that long after this.
Is basically a leprechaun.
I guess, yes.
Very clearly inspired by a leprechaun.
I suppose. So anyway, he's released from Arkham. And as he's leaving, Batman and Robin are in the car, just basically to warn him. And they kind of treat Mad Hatter like he's got this obsession with hats, which I guess is true. But in this specifically, it's more like he's like, "Oh, you're wearing a hat. Can I see that hat? I want to touch your hat. Can I see your hat?"
It's a desire for hats more than an obsession with hats.
Yeah, I mean, he's obsessed to the point where he makes a hat out of some newspaper just to give him a hat, because he can't not have a hat. He needs a hat. But he sends in an empty box to Commissioner Gordon for Batman, and Batman comes and sees it. There's a message saying, "I have gone hatless, Batman, but not in the way you want." The Mad Hatter. And essentially the plot of the issue, I don't think we have to go through this beat for beat necessarily, is that he does some crimes and they're all kind of hat related. Although I'll be honest, the first one, the expression that Batman connects it with, I have literally never heard in my life.
What was the expression again?
Let me find the page here, because they're at like a club and he steals all the money of all these rich people, and then it's the back at the mansion, and it's actually they're struggling to figure out what's going on. Jason's looking up in the newspapers, but Bruce is like, "Stop cutting up my newspaper, let's have some chocolate cake." And actually, even just how he gets to the phrase is kind of weird, because Alfred just says, "Of course the laundry takes me all day to get through, but..." And then Bruce is like, "That's it, through, Alfred, you're a genius." And I'm like, usually when you have that moment in a story where someone says something and it, like, you know, it sparks something in the brain of the other character, I feel like the word "through" isn't enough.
No, I agree with you. It's very, very tangential.
Yeah,
because it's such a common connecting word.
But the club that was robbed by Mad Hatter was called the Liars Club, and Batman says that a liar, amongst other things, is said to be someone who is talking through his hat. Have you ever heard that?
I cannot say I have.
Old-timey phrase. Is
old-timey and maybe an American specific phrase.
Maybe, but I mean, that doesn't necessarily... I mean, I don't watch enough movies that... I mean...
No, it's true. Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily factor into it too much, but I feel like it's just something I've never heard. But I think more importantly than that, though, the fact that he gets that from Alfred just saying the word "through" just kind of bothers me. It's like...
No, I get that. Honestly, I think we've overlooked the biggest point of this issue so far, though.
Uh-huh. And
that is the recurring theme of Batman telling Robin to soak something good.
Okay, yeah, the last issue Detective did have him hosing them down. He's like, "Hose me down, get me all wet, chum."
Yeah, and this time they're pouring buckets of water on the fire, and he's like, "That's it, Robin, soak them thoroughly." And I'm like, this is becoming a recurring theme.
That did happen, yes. And then there's some goofy comic shenanigans. They end up at an arena, because there's like a hockey game or something like that on. It's going to be a hat trick, of course, right? Which we've heard of hat tricks, yes.
They have them in they have them in football.
I guess why'd you specify that?
More just they have them in sports that we are familiar with.
Why do you assume that I am any more familiar with football than I am with hockey?
Cultural osmosis.
I'm offended that you think I know anything about football.
Not anything, but I would assume your familiarization with the word hat trick comes from cultural osmosis via football.
I don't know. I watched the Mighty Ducks movies a lot more growing up than I ever saw any football.
I believe that. Like I believe you in that.
I definitely did. So I'm not sure I'm ready to agree with that. But they end up in like, the museum area, this arena, and it's kind of this excuse for some wacky visuals because it's like a giant pool table. And when you actually look at the scale of this, like the scale of the 4 bad guys that are working for Mad Hatter on the pool table, this thing is literally the size of like a football field.
Yeah, I mean, if we assume Batman's around 6 foot-ish,
Yes.
With him on that the pull cue that he uses to like pole vault himself up, that pull cue's got to be at least 12 foot long. Like,
Yeah.
At least.
Which begs the question, why does the giant prop pool table have giant prop pool? Like, do they expect giants to come in and have a game? Like, and, okay, I'll buy it.
I love Batman's actual thought process is, well, if they built a giant pool table, they made giant pool cues. I'm like, well, did they?
Well, here's the thing. I will buy okay, to complete this, the whole like visual, there's like a rack of giant pool cues on the wall. But I would expect them not to be removable. I'd expect them just to be like a set display that's like nailed to the wall that you can't take. But the fact that they actually disconnect as if, no, you can actually use these to play. If you happen to be, 25 foot tall, then like you'll be able to do it.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
So, yeah, so that was just kind of the nonsense comic book stuff, which isn't necessarily a complaint more than just shenanigans. And
I think we're at that point in Detectives now where this feels really jarring when the last issue we read was year 1.
Yes. So Bruce lays a trap. He throws his hat in the political ring. And again, hat being a theme here, to draw out the Mad Hatter. Gordon even comes to the whole thing because Batman asked him to, but he doesn't really like Bruce Wayne very much. There's a weird beat here actually where Gordon says something about Bruce being a dick, and his father would be, if your father was here, and Bruce gets kind of angry and goes, "But he can't, Commissioner, can he?" And he's like, "I'm sorry, Bruce." And I'm like, that was a really weird thing to throw in the middle of this really goofy issue. Like, I don't know, it's like a really serious little beat.
Yeah, and Bruce kind of brushes it off immediately after because Gordon's like, "I'm sorry, Bruce." And he's like, "Nonsense, Commissioner." Like, forget about it.
It's almost like he goes into Batman mode for just like one panel, because it's like someone mentioned his dead parents. He's like, "Dead parents, I must skull."
This is the Martha moment decades before.
I'm Batman. I mean, sorry, Commissioner, you have a drink. So of course, Mad Hatter does show up with all of his hats. It all leads to a ridiculous confrontation on the roof. Where Mad Hatter has a rocket-propelled hat, a big top hat thing that has rockets at the bottom that'll actually fly him into space. But Batman hacks the radio frequency and it comes tumbling down. But the cliffhanger here, because there is a cliffhanger, is that Mad Hatter tries to shoot Batman. He's got a gun in his hat, because of course he does. And Batman dodges, takes down Mad Hatter, but when he turns around, the final panel is that Jason is lying there, potentially dead. There's a lot of almost killing Jason in these stories.
They really wanted to, didn't they?
This is the second time I've had Jason either be dead or almost be dead or threatened to be dead.
In like, what, 5 or 6 issues?
Yeah. I think it was like 2 issues ago.
No, I just mean in the total that we've been doing of Detective Comics, it's what, 6 issues maybe?
But I think because we're alternating with Batman, it feels longer. But it's actually, I think it was like just 2 issues ago we had the death dream sequence.
I think it was with the Scarecrow stuff.
Yeah. That wasn't that long ago in terms of issue. That may have been the one right before the Sherlock Holmes special one. But
yeah.
So I chuckled.
It was a long time coming when it finally happened, wasn't it?
Yeah, I chuckled Welsh reading. I mean, I'll give it that.
No, I did too. I really like the cover for the next issue, by the way.
Oh yeah, cover looks good. Carrying Robin's body. We're not quite at that story yet, the real story, but
no, but it's the prototype for that cover essentially.
Yes. No, I mean, it's just a fine read. There's some goofy elements. It's comical. It's the sort of thing that works better in a comic, because I've never been a fan of the 60s show. I've never liked it whenever I've seen any of it. I feel like there's a certain campness that you can get away with in comics that works for me better because it's on the page, versus live action where, the sillier elements, and it's not as silly as a 60s show, don't get me wrong. Oops, Connor disappeared for a second there.
How dare you?
Well, I mean, there's benefits to it.
Screw you.
A little bit of my alien wallpaper coming through is not a bad thing. But it's kind of hard to like rate these goofier kind of. I mean, it's obviously not a Silver Age issue because it's from 1986, 87, but it definitely feels like it's still sort of coming from that Silver Bronze Age era.
It wasn't a clean transition, was it,
No.
to what we think of as after the Silver Age? There is still very much a Silver Age feeling lingering in some books.
Yeah. So that is that. So I guess we'll rate the issue. What are you giving it?
I'm gonna give it a 6. It's all right. It's perfectly readable. I laughed a few times. I think there's been better issues of Detective already, though.
Oh, of course, I agree. No, I'll agree with the 6. I have nothing really to add to this point.